Right, welcome everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to this Learning and Work Institute webinar. So we're talking this afternoon about implementing the youth guarantee. Um, so a little bit of housekeeping by way of introduction. We've got a number of guests speakers this afternoon, so please do pop into the chat box, which hopefully, or Q&A box, which hopefully you should see on your screens somewhere if you have any particular questions to ask any of the panelists. This is all about our vision as an organisation for the Youth Guarantee and what it might look like. So I just wanted to say a few words about that before we go on and hear from our speakers. Um, so why do we need a youth guarantee? So um, those of you who've seen me speak before will know that generally what I do is show a whole load of charts with lines going depressingly in the wrong direction. I'm going to limit myself to only two such charts today. You will all be relieved to hear. So if we can go on to the next slide, please. Oh, there you go. I've already said this bit. So yeah, do submit your questions, as I say, using the Q&A function on your screens. That's me. And thank you. So first of all, scale of the issue. So there's almost 1 million young people who are not in education, employment, or training. And that's up by about a fifth since the pandemic. And actually, what I've shown here are the trends by gender as well. So you can see over time, and if we were able to take this further back, you'd see a similar sort of trend, I think, as well. So over time, a drop in the number of young women who are not in education, employment, or training, but some signs that it's kind of flattened off or may even be increasing a little bit more recently. And then those increases, particularly since the pandemic, in the number of young men who are not in education, employment, or training. Bit of a health warning. This sort of data all comes from the Labour Force survey, and the ONS has had a whole bunch of problems with that survey. So we can't be too precise about it. We don't want to overinterpret these stats. But we know that we've got this rise in the number of young people who are NEET across the UK. And we know that this is really bad for your long-term pay and job prospects. So this is something we really need to nip in the bud and get those lines heading downwards and make sure every young person gets the opportunities that they deserve. The next slide talks a little bit about some of the challenge around this. This is from a recent report we published delving into the data a little bit. So this looks at by age of young person who's not in education, employment, or training. When was the last time they had a paid job? And the thing that really stands out for me here are the orange bits of the bars. So these are people saying that they've never had a paid job. So you might expect, 16 to 18-year-olds, if you're not in education, employment, or training, it's perhaps quite likely you've never had a paid job, just because of the age as much as anything else, and also things like the decline in Saturday jobs over the recent decades as well. But look at those young people in their 20s and 22 to 24 there. So almost half of 22 to 24-year-old NEETs say they've never had a paid job. And I think what we've got here is a little bit of the pandemic generation coming through. So those it's unbelievable to think, isn't it, that the first lockdown was just over 5 years ago. So if you were 16 then, you're in your early 20s now. So you've partly got that pandemic generation coming through, that disruption of education, disruption of the transition into work as well. Um, and then the economy has generally been pretty rubbish, is the technical economist term, since 2008, actually. So you've got a slightly ropey economy, and then a particular drop in apprenticeship numbers for young people since the previous government's apprenticeship reforms in 2017. So the number of apprenticeships for young people went from low to very low. So you've got a lot of stuff going on there with the economy, with society, with pandemics, and with disruptions as well to both education and work and policy failures as well. We think too many policies, too many short term, too many acronyms, too little funding, and particularly apprenticeship policies that directly led to a significant drop in apprenticeships for young people. There endeth the depressing bits of the webinar. We're now going to go on to the slightly more uplifting bit. So what are we going to do about all of this? So if we have a look at the next slide, the government has said it wants to implement a youth guarantee across England, by which it means making sure that all 18 to 21-year-olds are offered help to find a job, training place, or apprenticeship. Now, we think a youth guarantee is a really good idea. We've been arguing for this for a number of years, including with as co-chairs of the youth employment group. We think it should be a wider age group. We think it should be 16 to 24-year-olds, and we think it's really important not just to look at the headline numbers of young people who are NEET, but also how long people are spending NEET as well. The more months you spend NEET as a young person, the worse the effects on your life chances. So I think the bottom right-hand corner of this slide is the key bit. And this is the vision that we're launching today, and you'll all get a link across to this. So we think we need about £1.9 billion worth more investment. Some of that's refocusing existing investment. For example, in the apprenticeship levy to young people, it's not all new money. Rachel Reeves will be relieved to hear. But to really expand employment support, expand education places, and expand apprenticeships for young people. So that's what we want to talk about today. How can we make this youth guarantee happen? How can we make a success of it? How can we make sure that every young person gets the employment and education opportunities that they need and deserve? So we're going to start off by hearing from two young people. So I'm really pleased we've got Zoya and Jaden with us. So if you want to pop your cameras on for us. Now, Jaden and Zoya are alumni of the Youth Futures Foundation Future Voices group, and we're really pleased at L&W to be working with YFF on the youth guarantee, but also lots of wider work as well. So it's great to be working with the YFF. And sorry, bear with me 1 second. There you go. I've pressed the wrong button. My technological skills haven't kept up. So Jaden and Zoya, maybe let's start with Jaden. Do you want to just say a little bit by way of introduction about yourself and where you're coming from?
Hi, so I'm Jaden, and as Stephen already said, I'm an alumni of the Future Voices group who L&W have been working with. I'm currently based in London, and I'm there for university. I'm coming to the end of my first year in archaeology, but I'm originally from Liverpool.
Fabulous. Thanks, Jaden. And we've already remarked off air about the excellent backdrop you've got there in Greenwich. This is all of London looks like that. I think we can agree. So it's great to have you with us this afternoon. And Zoya, do you want to say just a brief word of introduction about yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Zoya. I'm 20 and I'm currently looking for an apprenticeship. Like Stephen said, I'm also FVG alumni and I'm currently a part of the Youth Guarantee Advisory Group as well, and I'm based in Lancashire.
Fabulous, thank you. So Jaden, perhaps if we come across to you first, do you want to say we were really pleased to work with you both on this project. So thank you both for your time and your input. We wanted to make sure that everything that we say is influenced and informed by the voices of young people. So Jaden, I'm really interested in your views about all of these issues, your experience, and how we can really make a youth guarantee work. So over to you.
So when I still lived in Liverpool, the school that I attended was in the bottom 5% of the country. So the outcomes, particularly of like my year group, were quite low. Less than 25% of my year group left school with a grade 5 or above in both maths and English. And we didn't have a careers advisor because there wasn't the funds there for her to be able to do something effective. And that isn't something that is rare. A lot of people that attend state school comprehensives have similar experiences like that because of the way that the education system is being funded. And I know plenty of people that left school early, people that failed both maths and English, and both of them have, well, the people in both of them groups have been left feeling deflated and lacking confidence, which has only been made worse by them not being allowed to then follow their aspirations going into higher education because their grades haven't been good enough and them institutions aren't willing to take them on and take the risk and to give them the opportunity to succeed. And I think that um, it's that is one of the driving factors for young people becoming NEET. I myself, after I finished A levels, the grades I achieved when what I was expecting, and I was out of education and employment for about a year, and I really struggled to find employment. And I do think that something like the youth guarantee is something that is really important. And I think that so actually I'm quite pleased that Liverpool has been one of the trailblazing areas for this. They 4 days ago received the funding and they're receiving £5 million out of the total budget, and that is going towards supporting care leavers as 40% of them are NEET, and as well that's going towards funding mental health, um, providing them with free travel passes, and also of course like providing them with opportunities to look for work. And I just think that, that is absolutely brilliant because I mean from the research that LNW have done, out of the 20 areas that are best for employment opportunities, 16 of them are based in London, and that's something that is not unknown, and that's something that like I was quite concerned about, going forward. Like, what's this going to look like? Is this going to be controlled by central government? But it seems like that a lot of authority has been given to these like local authorities to control the issues within their own area. And I think that is really beneficial. And I agree with what you said earlier, Stephen, about how this needs to be opened up to a wider age group because I mean, as the statistics that you show, people that are in their early 20s are having the same struggles as those that are 18.
Fabulous. Thank you, Jaden. And you've plugged our research better than I did, so our comms team is going to be very happy with you. The research Jaden was referring to was part of that wider delve into the stats I talked about, and we refreshed our Youth Opportunities Index, which looks at education and employment opportunities across England. And as Jaden said, a lot of the top spots were places in London, which is really good for those areas. That was not the case 20 years ago. You could be living in right next door to Canary Wharf or some high-flying city jobs, but it could seem like a world away. So kind of we've made some of those links, which is great, but we need those opportunities linked up in the rest of the country. So we'd love to rerun that in a few years' time and find a slightly different set of results and everybody kind of bumping up in their scores as well. Zoya, so as well as so we're interested to hear about your background and your experience and your thoughts. And I know that you're on the National Youth Guarantee group as well. So you've kind of got a real opportunity to shape some of this. So very interested in your thoughts.
Thank you, Stephen. I've approached it really differently from Jaden. I've decided to go through some of the main barriers I thought were like challenges for young people to access employment or education, and then I'll link to the youth guarantee afterwards. So one of the biggest challenges for young people is the overall support. 43% of young people label anxiety as their biggest barrier to finding work. The lack of third spaces to formulate meaning and structure in young people's lives fuels this perpetual state of loneliness, and job centres must become this third space for young people, which is a safe space to not worsen their anxiety. The absence of effective careers advice and mentoring has led me and my friends to choosing the wrong path after secondary school. My friends who were formerly the top achievers in our secondary school left sixth form after 3 months due to the academic pressure in science A levels, and due to the lack of support, they later engaged with unhealthy and antisocial behavior and later became NEET. I also think that ethnic disparities is a major problem, with nearly 25% of the UK's young people being from an ethnic minority background. Is really important to address. And a BBC report in 2019 revealed that Pakistani applicants needed to send 70% more applications than white British applicants to receive a positive response. And regional disparities, as someone who's from a very rural area, has been really challenging for me to find work which is meaningful and good for me. Blackburn and Nottingham ranked worse on L&W's Youth Opportunity Index. And as someone who lives in these regional areas, opportunities are very sparse and often they don't pay enough to fulfill familial responsibilities, especially with apprenticeships. The wage is much lower than minimum wage. So you're often feeling more inclined to go for retail jobs rather than an apprenticeship, which will actually benefit you in the long run. And a lot of other people of color have to provide for their family because of challenges with maybe domestic abuse or just familial pressure. And traveling to the other cities nearby is often costly and transport is very unreliable, and that can make employers more likely to fire you unjustly because the trains made you late or your bus didn't show up. And a lot of jobs I've seen have required a driver's license, which is a major barrier for a lot of young people because it costs so much to learn how to drive now, and not everyone has that time. They might have caring responsibilities. I also think that the lack of accountability for employers to implement transparent hiring processes is a major reason why young people struggle so much in accessing employment. The use of video interviews enables employers to discriminate against young people on superficial reasoning, such as their appearance, accent, or ethnicity. The lack of human interaction is also very dehumanizing and impersonal. In my experience, I have received 8 rejections after the video interview stage, and in some instances, such as in my application to BAE Systems and to Vodafone, the AI software has emailed me with a report stating that I'm a strong fit based on what I've said in my video interview, and I've performed very well compared to other candidates. And as a young person, being strung along in these long interviewing processes with multiple games and application forms, it's very demotivating. And the fact that they take so long to even send out an impersonal rejection emails really like saddening. And a lot of neurodivergent people have also shared that these assessment processes are unfair and they're not based on science, and often they just discriminate against a lot of neurodivergent people because they might not be able to assess someone's emotions or their face expressions as much as someone else, even though that's not relevant to the job description. And the lack of resources to complete assessments for young people also excludes those who cannot afford private tuition to train on how to do numerical assessments. That's why I think a youth guarantee is so important, because young people have been left behind for far too long. Nearly 1 million young people in the UK are not in education, employment, or training. And by providing all young people who are NEET with access to a job, training, or apprenticeship, we can drive economic growth and positively impact these vulnerable young people who are really struggling. And also we can prevent youth violence and antisocial behavior. I think the youth guarantee should be implemented by directly consulting young people and consulting local organizations to understand regional barriers to their community. I also think that it's very important to hold employers accountable for their processes, assess their processes by setting up fake candidate profiles, and also support them on how to manage larger amounts of applications. I think there should be some analysis on the algorithms which they are using, because they have the opportunity to alter them for oppression. And overall, it's of utmost importance to honor the phrase, nothing about us without us, because only young people are aware of what will be most effective for them and for other young people. And by involving young people, we can effectively dismantle any distrust young people may have of government or other workers reaching out. And that's why I'm so pleased that we are already beginning to implement some of these suggestions through the Youth Guarantee Advisory Group, which I'm a part of. I've truly felt like my input is useful, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to share my lived experiences, ideas, and personal barriers. It has given me hope for the Youth Guarantee, and I truly believe that it will work both in theory and in action because it was made for young people, by young people, not by assumptions from an external source.
Fabulous. Thank you, Zoya. And I think a lot of important points there, including around loneliness and the input, technology can be very connecting, but also disconnecting as well, and how employers recruit and the opportunities that they offer as well. So we'll pick up all of those themes as we go through, and a reminder to please do pop any questions that you have for any of our speakers into the Q&A. But I want to bring in now Claire Ward, who we're very grateful, Claire, for you being with us. Claire is the Mayor of the East Midlands County Combined Authority, and one of those trailblazers that Jaden was referring to earlier. So a good chance to test some different ways to implement that youth guarantee in practice. So Claire, thank you for being with us today, and over to you. I'm not sure if you can hear us, Claire. You're on mute and off camera at the moment, but if you are there, do come and tell us about the East Midlands Trailblazer. There, oh, you were there for a second. There we go. Claire, over to you.
Excellent. Great. Hopefully you can see me and the slide deck
Yes.
as well. Great. Well, thank you very much. And it was really interesting to listen to both Jaden and Zoya. And I think much of what they were talking about, I hope that I'll be able to address as part of our Youth Guarantee Trailblazer, some of the issues that were raised there. I want to start, first of all, by thanking you, Learning and Work, for putting on this webinar and for all the important work that you are doing on youth employment and the whole skills and work agenda. As you've clearly shown in your research, the talents of far too many of our young people are being wasted. And as Mayor of the East Midlands, I'm the first Mayor elected last year. I'm really committed to giving every young person in the East Midlands the opportunity to succeed through good, fulfilling work or further education or training. And the Youth Guarantee is a great chance for us to show how we can deliver on that promise. As somebody who's got two teenagers myself, and watching them and others growing up in this region, I'm really determined that we are going to make this region a good place for young people to grow up in with that opportunity. So I wanted to start really by outlining, if we go on to the next slide, I think, I want to outline some of the key challenges that we face in the East Midlands that our guarantee is looking to address. 12% of our young people aged 16 to 24 are not in education, employment or training in the wider East Midlands region, which is pretty much in line with the England and UK average. But the East Midlands ranks relatively low on key educational outcomes. So only 19% of GCSEs were graded 7 or above in the region, compared with 28% in London. And perhaps what's even more worrying is that the data is far worse in some parts of our region than in others. For example, if you live in Rushcliffe, which is just outside the city of Nottingham as a borough, 73% of young people have attained a level 3 by the age of 19, compared with only 39% in Ashfield, which is one of our former coal mining communities. So the rates of entry to university follow a very similar pattern, with only 34% of young people in the region entering university at the age of 18. The national average is 37% in England, but it's 52% in London. So when people say to me that there's deprivation in London, yes, there is, but there's also a level of social mobility and access that's way beyond many, many other regions outside London and the South East. And finally, one distinct feature of the East Midlands region is its geography. As the first combined county authority, we've got the full range of environments, from the cities of Derby and Nottingham to the towns of Chesterfield, Mansfield and Worksop, through to rural areas like the High Peak. So that makes us a perfect testing ground for tackling a complex challenge like youth employment. If you're a young person, for example, living in some of our rural communities, you don't just have the challenge of finding a job or getting into education or employment or skills. You've got the challenge of accessing it simply because of the geography. What's the transport? And Zoya talked about the difficulties with the cost of driving for young people. That's a massive issue in large parts of this region. So on to the next slide. One of the key advantages of situating the Trailblazer at the mayoral authority level is our ability to bring together local, national and regional programmes, not just across skills and employment, but across a much wider range of functions, all of which can contribute towards helping young people into work or training. The Youth and Careers programme within MCA includes not just the Trailblazer, but also our Careers Hub, which is delivered in partnership with a Careers and Enterprise company, and the Connected Futures programme, sponsored by the Youth Futures Foundation. These programmes give the authority links into every school in our region, as well as a group of over 300 employers who have committed to working with us to support young people's transition into work. Our wider skills and employment portfolio includes the £50 million Adult Skills Fund, our skills boot camps and the Connect to Work programme. These initiatives are delivered in close partnership with our regional stakeholders, including local authorities, our education and training providers, businesses, the NHS, the voluntary sector and DWP. It's our ability to convene these system partners around a common set of strategic goals that makes our impact much greater than the sum of its parts. And I think that's really the secret of success of the devolution models, where government departments are very much siloed and find it more difficult to relate across different areas. The mayoral model, combined authority model, makes that easier to see at one all of the different levers that can have an impact. We also benefit, though, from close ties with national government in the case of our skills and employment work, with DWP, DFE, Skills England, and of course the Trailblazer is a classic example of close working that actually is working between government departments with DWP and DFE to test out the key features of the youth guarantee. And we hope that that will influence the upcoming spending review and the future of its national rollout. And then finally, I'm committed to embedding the youth voice across all of our decision making at MCARE, and I'll say more about this later. And again, listening to Zoya making that point about the importance of the youth voice in it all. On to the next slide. One of the main challenges with the Trailblazer is its length, with only 12 months to mobilise, deliver, evaluate, and then demobilise. We have to be discerning around what provision we can stand up and deliver impact with in such a short space of time. I see the opportunity, therefore, as being about how we build the capability of both EMCA and our wider systems partners and capture as much learning as possible through joint work. In testing out a range of models with a wide variety of partners, we'll quickly see where the energy is, what kind of partnerships work best, which initiatives best bring young people to the table. We'll get better at engaging and working directly with young people in designing and delivering programmes, and we'll sharpen our understanding of our own local system, really interrogating what's already in place and assessing the gaps in provision. And we'll get much stronger at using data, both by joining up data sets to drive insight and by building systems of soft intelligence that we can use as an overlay on national and regional statistics. On to the next slide. So with that in mind, our approach has been to test a fairly broad set of interventions in 3 key buckets. That way we can mobilise faster and avoid the seesaw of building up large-scale provision before we know if it will be funded in future. The 3 strands are transition support, and this will focus on that critical transition from college to either further training or employment. We're working with Chesterfield College and partners on a one-stop shop advice and support hub, and with Nottingham College on an enhanced flexible learning programme. While we'll have kept the target groups broad for these efforts, they will focus on young people most at risk of becoming NEET, for example, because of mental health challenges or caring responsibilities. Tailored support. These models will provide tailored and targeted support to young people with additional barriers, including mental health, SEND, unpaid caregivers, homelessness, poor prior attainment, risk of criminal justice contact, and transport challenges. For example, Derby City will run a 6 to 10 week programme in the more deprived communities of Derby, focused on young people who are care experienced, have SEND, are previously known to children's social care or young offenders services. The programme will provide holistic support, including talking therapies, job coaches, skills development, and wraparound support. Employer participation. We will enhance Nottingham's inclusive recruitment hub with a dedicated HR inclusion officer, supporting SMEs with inclusive recruitment practices. And this will act as a pilot for the Good Employment Charter that I'm planning to introduce. It was one of my manifesto commitments. So we'll also scale the opportunities portal, currently focused on Nottinghamshire, across the EMCA region, giving young people a simple web-based interface to find apprenticeships, courses, and job opportunities. Alongside these programmatic strands, we'll bring in a research and learning partner to help us capture learning, holding community of practice events, teasing out insight, and delivering our local evaluation. We'll also commission a data and digital partner to allow us to make best use of data and digital tools, both at a strategic commissioning level and in operational delivery. These 2 commissions will give us some critical foundations that we'll need to deliver the youth guarantee effectively in future. On to the next slide. So, as I said earlier, I'm really committed to embedding the youth voice across our decision-making at EMCA. And that's why I've set up a youth committee. And you can see on the photograph the group at their first meeting here. Through the Trailblazer, we've recruited a dedicated youth engagement manager who will not only work with the youth committee, but with youth forums across the region to bring the voices of young people into the programme, not just at the outset, but every stage of design, development, delivery, and evaluation. And I should just say that the people that we brought together on the youth committee are really a wide and diverse group with different experiences and backgrounds. And I think that's so important that we are able to do that, working with different partners, so that we don't just have those who are, in a sense, self-selecting to be representative of other young people, but that we encourage young people with different perspectives to come forward as much as we possibly can. Finally, where is it all heading? Well, I'm delighted to see all the work the Learning and Work is doing to champion a national youth guarantee. With the skills shortages we're seeing in so many professions, it's an economic necessity to use all the talent that we have available. But it's also a moral imperative. We can't let young people's lives go to waste. Young people who have so much to offer our businesses and our communities. And of course, I'd like to see the initiatives that we're testing extended and put on a sustainable funding footing. From an East Midlands perspective, there are some practical ways that we can keep enhancing and improving our ways of working to get better outcomes. First, improving our ability to identify and target young people at risk, including working more closely with schools and their risk of NEET indicators, so that we can make sure we're spotting young people early and putting in place targeted support. We'll build on the partnerships we're putting in place through the Trailblazer to make sure we operate as a joined up collaborative system, getting the most out of the interventions we're putting in place. And EMCA will continue to play its role as a systems leader, not only bringing together local partners, but making sure that local insight is fed into government policymaking and that central and local initiatives are coordinated and coherent. And finally, we'll double down on embedding youth voice across our work so that we're really listening to what young people are telling us when we're putting in place programs of support. You know, what I would say in conclusion is that the Trailblazer is really a unique opportunity for us here in the East Midlands, and especially as a new combined authority, gives us a chance to design and deliver innovative approaches to addressing a fundamental challenge and to use our insights to influence the national rollout of the Youth Guarantee. As a country, we have got to get this right, and we'll do whatever we can to play our part. I'm really looking forward to being involved in it, and I hope that it will deliver the results that we expect from it. But thank you again to Learning and Work for hosting this really important event and allowing me to showcase a little bit of what we are doing in the East Midlands.
Fabulous. Thank you, Claire. As you say, really important opportunity. It was great to hear you talk about some of the things that actually Jayden and Zoya were talking about earlier as well, the sort of youth voice and the role of employers there as well. I know we've got time at the end as well for some questions and answers. I can see they're starting to come in. So please do put your questions for Claire and for the other panelists into the Q&A, and we'll get to those after our next speaker. So next up, we've got Sarah Young, who is the Director of Policy and External Affairs at the Youth Futures Foundation. So I said earlier on, we're really pleased to be working with YFF on this issue and lots of other issues as well. And they do lots of great work more broadly. So Sarah, over to you. Sarah, I don't know if it's just me, but I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
So sorry, I'll start again. So thank you so much for inviting me. And just for those of you who are not familiar with us, Youth Futures Foundation is the What Works Centre for Youth Employment, with a particular focus on marginalised young people. If we just skip to the beginning of the slide deck. Great, thank you. And I guess the reason that Youth Futures Foundation are a thing is because the youth unemployment and inactivity challenge is a long-term and stubborn problem in our country. And I have stolen Stephen's graph here just on the left, just to sort of re-illustrate the fact that this is not a new problem. It's been going a little bit up and down, but ultimately it's remained at high levels for over a decade, and we've seen it rise, and it's remaining stubbornly high. And as a country, we've not been able to really sustainably address this like other countries such as the Netherlands have been able to do. And I think we all agree that we need focus and urgent attention on this. But we also need to think long term, and we need to think about having a more ambitious, sustainable goal. And I just wanted to mention that one of the things that Youth Futures Foundation would like to see is for the government to think about this as it would for net zero. So to set a 2050 target for us to be the best in the OECD by 2050. Now that sort of record, I guess, belongs to the Netherlands at present. And just to put that into context, so we have 1 in 8 young people who aren't earning or learning. The Netherlands have managed to focus on this over a number of years, and their NEET rate is more like 1 in 20 young people. And if we were to be able to work towards that and to do that, our research shows that would be worth 69 billion to our economy. I mean, approximately more than 500,000 young people being in employment. But I think the really interesting and needed question is, what would be the more immediate milestone for the next few years for this Parliament on the way to that type of long-term systems change goal? And, as you'll have seen from Stephen's slides at the beginning, the Learning and Work Institute proposal is that looking like, can we get that rate down to sort of less than 1 in 10, so 10%, and 150,000 more young people earning and learning. And I think that's a really helpful thing to throw out there, and a really helpful thing for government to think about when it's deciding what it wants to aim for and what the likely investment might be. And so hopefully government are reading the reports with eagerness today. I suppose I wanted to outline that I think, government's approach is refreshing. It is acknowledging that this is a problem. And the youth guarantee is a really welcome start to this, particularly because it is cognizant of the complexities that there are when it comes to the NEET challenge in this country. And can we go to the next slide, please? And so the Learning and Work Institute's Youth Opportunity Index really is a piece of work that helps us lift the lid under that big 1 million number that is often the number that's thrown around, in the media and in headlines. But what that is really telling us is that the problem is complex, it's micro-local, it's peaky and patchy, and often, defined to real differences in ward areas within particular areas. And that's really important to understand when we're trying to build solutions. A couple of other references on here. We've done a big piece of work with NatSen, and just last week, Impetus released a really valuable report called the Youth Jobs Gap as well, which complements and gives additional analysis to the Youth Opportunity Index analysis. And what that's giving us is some really granular, a granular view and a granular picture on what is really needed. Where some of the complexities are, where some of the targeting is really needed, and really important if we are to make a success of a youth guarantee going forward. If we just go to the next slide. But I think as we recognise, and I think as Learning and Work Institute's paper is referring to today, the youth guarantee is great. It's something that our organisation, Learning and Work, and other leading expert organisations have called for, but it is in a pilot year. It's in just 8 places, the age range is limited, and there's limited funding behind the offer. And we will need to do much more across skills, education, employment, labour market, and I'd argue youth policy as well, given the scale and the character of this challenge, and particularly given the softening labour market that we see today. And some of the ideas in Learning and Work Institute's report today are calling and backing for things that us at Youth Futures think is really sensible, and which the evidence would suggest that we back, particularly on more apprenticeships for young people, and considering options like wage subsidies. And again, given the softening labour market, those things will be really important. So just moving on, I just wanted to highlight that I think there are some really enabling ingredients from which central government can build on to set the pace and enable local areas to really deliver. I think the first one, as I briefly mentioned, is that this government really does recognise and care about this issue, and I do think that issue is growing in salience. We've seen, this issue highlighted by the Prime Minister in his first party conference speech. We've seen the issue highlighted by Rachel Reeves in the budget speech, and these aren't things that just, we've had this problem for the last 2 decades, and these aren't things that just happen. So that is really important. I think the mission and the devolution lens also potentially set a framework with which to be more successful at tackling this challenge. You can see the mission reflected, the growth and opportunity mission reflected in the Youth Guarantee. And one thing that's been really, really refreshing is to see the DWP and the DFE working really hand in glove on this. And it's something that will need to continue if we are to pull in adjacent areas of policy to back the Youth Guarantee. And of course, the devolution lens is the thing that will really make the difference here. As we've seen from the data, the problems are highly complicated and hyper local, and the only systems change solution that is going to be able to target effectively is a local solution. And great to hear from Claire about how they're thinking about that in the East Midlands. Government has inherited some useful infrastructure, not all of it we might argue is useful, but some useful infrastructure which helps with the problem of coordination. One of those things, I know it's referred to in the report today, are youth hubs. So we did some work last year with Demos, where we interviewed lots of young people around the country about their experiences with Job Centre Plus and with youth hubs. And youth hubs are a more one-stop shop type infrastructure for young people. And what young people are calling out is that where they are likely to mistrust and feel that Job Centre Plus is not helpful, with models like youth hubs, it's much more welcoming, much more integrated. And I know those types of models are things that local areas are thinking about. But again, there is infrastructure like that government has inherited that it could put to really good use in backing the Youth Guarantee. We do have some really strong, growing and high quality evidence on the problem and what works. And this allows policymakers at this point to place some really, really confident bets that where they can prove return on investment. And hopefully that's something that's happening at the moment, and something that Treasury are able to recognise. Learning and Work Institute pull out two key areas in their recommendations. And I just want to highlight these two. So apprenticeships and wage subsidies. So apprenticeships are featured in our youth employment toolkit, which brings together the best global evidence around interventions. And what the best global evidence says is that apprenticeships are particularly impactful for getting young people onto work and good careers. And they are most impactful for young people who are facing barriers and marginalisation. So restoring the apprenticeship system to work much better for young people is really, really key. Wage subsidies, there is some really strong evidence around wage subsidies, particularly for young people, and if that is targeted to need and potentially at specific cohorts. So again, given the scale of the problem, wage subsidies feel like something that should definitely be in play. They are an expensive upfront investment, but return on investment is high when targeted well. And we saw that in most sort of recent example, Kickstart during the pandemic returned a 17 percentage point increase, which is pretty high. As we've highlighted, there is greater willingness from government to include young people in solutions through the Youth Guarantee, within trailblazers, as we heard today, and in adjacent areas of policy like the National Youth Strategy. And great to have, people like Zoya on that advisory group for the Youth Guarantee. That's exactly the sort of perspective and person that government needs to hear from in informing solutions. And the last one, like we cannot predict this. This is just a chance, but potentially we might have a 10-year lens here. You never know what's going to happen in politics, but as we look at it currently, there is a lack of united opposition to the current government. So if we are lucky, we may have a 10-year lens here, and that's really important if we're to set a sustainable path for change. So a real opportunity, I would argue, for this government. And then just moving on to the last slide. And just some final thoughts to leave everyone with before questions. So it feels like the thing to focus on now for public policy is defining the success measures of the Youth Guarantee. I think Learning and Work Institute have put forward some useful markers in the sand for this that government should seriously consider. it feels like government also need to look at groups of marginalised young people and think about perhaps what the specific success measures might be, for instance, for SEND young people, or perhaps for people from care experience backgrounds, and in other areas, just those as example. I think there is opportunity for government to leverage in other areas of policy to reinforce the youth guarantee. The National Youth Strategy, I think, could be key. One of the big challenges government has is you've got over 400,000 young people who are not claiming benefits, are not in touch with any state support, and are really hard to get to. Trusted adults are a key conduit here, and it feels like there's an opportunity for both the National Youth Strategy and the National and the Youth Guarantee to be overlaid together. And then I guess finally, as you'd expect me to say, is what work centre evaluation really matters. We haven't heard a lot yet about how that's going to happen or be shaped up across the areas, and watch that for interest if we are to get some really good learnings. But I'll stop there and hand back to you, Stephen.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. And yes, you're amongst friends here. We're all in favour of evaluation. What do we want evaluation? When do we want it at the appropriate juncture in the appropriate way? So yes, that's not much of a rallying cry. Thank you to all of our speakers. We've got a bunch of questions in the Q&A and a very limited set of time. So I'm going to pick out one question, which I think basically encompasses all of them. And I'm going to ask you each to try and, this is impossible, but I'm going to ask you each to try and stick to 30 seconds or so if you could. So this is a difficult question in a short time period, so I apologise to you all for that. But one person who's anonymous on here has said, if you had a magic wand and an unlimited amount of money, what's the one thing that you would do to try and make the youth guarantee a success? And I think this gets a little bit at the do we just need to squeeze as much as we can out the existing systems? We've got the right tools, we're just not using them as we might. Or do we need to be a bit bigger and radical to make this work? So that's a very difficult question, and I've given you all 30 seconds to do it, so I'm sorry about that. But Claire, should we start with you?
Well, unfortunately, we don't. But if I did, I think you'd be looking at personalisation, really understanding the particular individual challenges of the young person, but also making sure that from an early point in their life, their first interactions with thinking about whether they are going to be working or in education, and helping them to have that journey all the way through from primary school right through secondary school.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, but just we talked about people, not magic things happening when you turn 21 to 22, but the same thing is sort of pre-16 as well. I think that's completely agree. Zoya, do you want to go next?
Yes, I'd love to. Thank you. Well, I think it's kind of similar to what Sarah said earlier. I think that youth unemployment is really multifaceted, and often like young people are going through stuff external to just being unemployed. So they might be going through mental health difficulties or familial challenges. So I'd say that it needs to be personal for every young person. And I think there's already systems in place, but some areas are lacking certain organizations or systems. So I'd say that it'd be really nice if every young person could have a mentor that supports them in their journey and helps them and signposts them, and also stays with them whilst they're in employment, so that they always have someone to go to in case there's unfair discrimination or any queries.
Great, thank you, Zoe. That's a good point. Yeah, if we want to be personalised for every young person, we need the right set of infrastructure there, and then we need to signpost and work our way around it and get the system to work around people rather than vice versa, I would add as well. Jayden, do you want to go next?
Right, so I think that there should be a better joining up of services and early intervention, because young people need to be building skills and gain experience before the age of 18, which is what the Youth Guarantee is focusing on. And there needs to be more mental health support consistently all throughout school, and there needs to be increased connection between educational institutions and local and national businesses. And I think that all of this needs to be done in collaboration with young people to make sure that the policies that are being made for us are meeting the needs that we have.
Great, thank you. Yes, so some common themes around integration, and also, yeah, we haven't touched much on health actually, but that's a really important point. We're going to need another webinar for that. Sarah, over to you, last but not least.
Restoring the apprenticeship system for young people based on the evidence, that's the biggest ROI. We should have a guarantee for young people, for anybody that wants to do an apprenticeship should be able to, the same as we've got for university. You need to do quite a lot of things for that, but a first start might be doing things like pointing the levy towards that. So we'd like to see things like, ring fence 50% of that levy funding for level 2 and 3 apprenticeships, specifically for young people, would be a decent lever.
Great, thank you. Yes, we definitely need, I think, to refocus that apprenticeship system. Some announcements today about restricting some apprenticeships, but less about how we're going to get the other bit up. So hopefully more to follow in due course. I'm sorry, I didn't quite get around all of the questions. That was my attempt at one question to incorporate all of the questions. I'm really grateful to all of our speakers for giving their time this afternoon, to Sarah, to Jayden, to Zoya, and to Claire as well. This is definitely the start of a debate, not the end of one. It's going to take time to turn this around, but it's great that we've got leaders like Claire, we've got young people inputting like Jayden and Zoya, and we've got organisations like Sarah's working with ours and many others as well, to try and make a real difference for the future of young people. So thank you to all of our speakers. Thank you to all of you who dialed in this afternoon, and everybody who put a question in as well. All of the bits of research that other speakers have plugged far better than me are on our website, and you'll be getting a link, I think, to the new bit of research I was referring to as well. And we're very keen to keep working with all of you on making the Youth Guarantee a success. So if there's any way that we can help, please do let us know. But thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your afternoons. Thank you all.